Hello, me friends. Today is a day of surprise, of exchanges, of revelations, and of something far heavier than any of us expected to bear. We catch the children of the Crescent Moon as they rise from Earth's cradle, the Voidpiercer climbing into the star-salted dark with a library in her belly, books and scrolls, odd machines, and older secrets, all pried from the Forge of Fury's clenched fist. Earth dwindled to a bright moat behind them, sunlight on a marble no larger than a memory, and wild space opened like a held breath, finally released. Soon, the Astral Sea received them. Routine, hard-earned and comforting, was just beginning to settle over the deck when the first signs of unease crept over Revi Terran's face. The helmswoman's hands hovered, then clenched. Something had the ship. The Voidpiercer drifted without drifting, drawn toward a shadow that had not been there a heartbeat before. But that is the Astral Sea for you. Time folds, distance lies, perception moves like a fish under ice, and sometimes you are upon a thing before you even know it exists. Dreadnaught, a crewman whispered, half prayer, half curse. The husk of an Astral Dreadnaught, vast as a small moon and twice as wrong, turned slowly in the star sheen ahead. Plates of its armor floated loose like fallen continents, each one prized by shipwrights who fancied themselves bold. Strips of meat the size of keeps hung preserved in the void's indifferent cold. Awe clutched the crew, and so did fear. And then, within the torn ribs of that drifting carcass, a darker shadow moved. It slid free like a secret that had run out of patience. A ship without sails, without rigging. A fortress dragged from the earth and taught to move through heaven. Black stone and burnished bronze fused into a single colossal hull. Cathedral spires bristled from its back, etched with runes that pulsed like dying stars. Massive chains hung beneath the keel, and delicate, transparent veins unfurled from its flanks like the idea of wings. The very air around it thrummed. A deep marrow note crawled the timbers of the Voidpiercer, and as it closed, its gravity bent theirs, tugging at boots and at guts alike. Near the peak of the forward spire, within a broken arch window and tattered banners whispering to no wind at all, a figure stood. A presence our heroes had felt before. The party's archivist remembered the first vision that had greeted them before they had arrived at the Radiant Citadel's preserve of the ancestors. A silhouette that was astride a shadow dragon, a fate-shaped rider in half-light. This was that shape, now given edge and possibly a name. The party had called him Kaaltar. The Dirge of Eternity was his ship. I tell you plainly, the trap was already sprung. Kaaltar had turned his gaze on the Voidpiercer, drawn by an essence he had not felt in centuries. Something inside that ship, though what and where were not yet clear. The children would learn this later, but for now, only dread told them truth. The fortress ship advanced with the inevitability of a tide, and then a voice, not in their ears, but in their minds, spoke with the assurance of someone unaccustomed to contradiction. This is curious. What brings you, strange sailors, to this part of the sea? Silence held the crew, and Revi's knuckles had leached white. Captain Vernex herself stared as if seeing a cathedral walking. The fear was not mere terror. It was broadcast, a pressure that smothered courage into compliance. But the children's wills did not bend so easily, and so it fell to them to answer. "We're just traveling home, big guy," the archivist said. "Because some battles you begin with a joke and hope the laugh buys breath." "Where would be home?" was the question. "The Radiant Citadel," came the answer. "A place the giant did not know." He filed it away with a predator's care. "And what brings you on this course?" he says. "How did you come so far?" "A task," the party said. "A mission." "Curiosity now raised," he says. "A mission? Through my path? Unlikely." His tone edged from curiosity to edict. The party sought to be cagey. It is hard to be nimble when in a snare. And then, perhaps a bit too candidly by half, the archivist offered a name. "It's related to the history of the Obsidian Order," he said. "More names that are unfamiliar," Kaaltar replied, cool as an archive in winter. He ordered, "Turn around." "Why?" the party asked, and meant it. Unconsciously, a response of "why" came back to the party, and for a heartbeat, confusion. No one asks why when Kaaltar commands, the thought was. And then iron returned to his voice. "There are expectations in my space." I won't bore you with the back and forth that followed. Question to question, command to resistance. But beneath the words, Kaaltar listened, weighing every answer. Piece by piece he understood what they themselves did not. That the cargo they carried would, if allowed, set them at odds with him and his charge. That among their crates lay knowledge he was sworn to unmake. The decision landed him with the clean, terrible finality of a judge's gavel. By this time the Dirge of Eternity had slid alongside, and Revi, finally breaking through her shock at last, reached for the helm to kick the Voidpiercer into flight. Irised panels, however, opened along the Dirge's flank, and 8 massive cannons spoke at once. The Voidpiercer reeled. Planks burst in splinters, holes toward daylight where daylight had no business being. Sailors crumpled where they stood, and before the screams had finished, something heavier and far worse came haunting from beneath. An anchoring chain, inscribed with runes that bit even as iron, fired from the Dirge's keel, and despite Revi's desperate swing, punched deep into the Voidpiercer's side. The pull had begun. The party realized they would die here, and it sat on them like a stone. The party's archivist's eyes ran the chaos for a sliver of purchase. Some path, any path that could be of help. If they could get aboard the Dirge unseen, perhaps they could vanish into its cathedrals and live to plan. Leol, the rogue who'd only just found his true name, gambled faster. He guessed at Kaaltar's hunger. It had to be the mysterious capsule gathered in Greyhawk. Coffin-like device that even the city had made room for in silence. With the thief's audacity, he spun an illusion. The capsule ripped from the Voidpiercer by that last volley, tumbling slowly end over end into the Astral Sea. And Kaaltar saw it, and for the first time in an age, the hunter believed a decoy. He moved, and what followed the children learned only from a trembling shade pressed later into a confession. Kaaltar chose to descend with 14 giant shades at his back to the Dirge's lower hold. There, in the ship's belly that had already opened like a steel chapel, the Voidpiercer, chain-dragged and helpless, was being dragged into the jaws of a crusher the size of a temple. The last of the talk fell away. Orders snapped, and the great doors groaned wider. On the Voidpiercer's deck, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Encircled by iron and inevitability, the children still looked for feet of purchase on a cliff face. Shear's law. The jaws of the crusher closed. The arms, like continents, slammed inward, and the deck was swept clean. Men, crates, life, all wiped in a single ruthless pass. The ship itself screamed. Bones screamed. Breath snapped from lungs like thread from a spool. One by one, then all at once, the children folded, each soul dragged toward the dark with a force that extinguishes lamps and prayers alike. And here, if I were a cheap bard, I would end the tale. I would let the hush swallow you. I would leave you with the image of a ship ground to unlettered paste, a crew poured into the cracks of a cathedral's appetite, heroes triumphed over by fate they could neither flee nor finesse. But the Astral Sea keeps stranger ledgers than that, and there are lines written in inks we do not see. A crewman of the Dirge, later cornered by terror and truth, told this, that as the Crusher's teeth bit home, the Void Piercer staggered, its hull ruins guttered like dying embers, and then, every soul in that hold heard it. Not wood crushing, not fire bursting, but a cry that carried the ache of sorrow, the weight of grief, the fire of anger, and the unyielding steel of defiance. It clawed into the bone and thought, a dirge and a scream braided into one, as if the ship itself refused the sentence pronounced upon it. Light detonated from the Void Piercer's deck. A wall of raw force burst outward, picked up the giants and shades like chaff, and flung even Kaaltar himself hard against the walls. The Dirge of Eternity shuddered from keel to spire, and the Astral Sea wrinkled like a skin in cold water. When Kaaltar rose, slow, astonished, and an old god tasting surprise, the hold had fallen into a silence so wide it had edges. Giants shouted and heard nothing. Shades gestured and felt the shape of words without their sounds. And in the jaws of that crusher, there was nothing. No trail, no shimmer, no crack of the veil. No splinters, no bodies, no half-crushed regrets. One heartbeat the Void Piercer existed, and the next it was an absence shaped like hope. Only the echo remained, a scream that did not fade so much as scar the memory of those who heard it, a sound no other soul will ever claim to have heard. So this ends tonight's breath of the tale. I would linger, but there is a dragon with a long memory and a short temper who slipped a trap of mine. I would not risk its shadow over your own rooftops. Keep that image if you will, though. A fortress of grief knocked silent. A ship swallowed by its own defiance. And somewhere in the Astral Sea, a line of fate being rewritten in a light you cannot see. When next we meet, I will tell you whether that line leads to resurrection or reckoning.